Welcome back, everybody. Just one last polymer firearm before we move on to the milsurps again, and that is this little Walther P22. This is the second generation of this firearm, and I think it's one of the better values out there as far as 22s go for the features you get now on this new generation firearm. And I was able to find this one on sale for just a twitch over $200, and at that price point for a practice gun, you can't go wrong. Now, if you'll remember, I've done a lot. Let me just grab one real quick. I've done a lot with the Sig Sauers recently, the hammer-fired, full-sized center-fire large bore guns. And in order to keep my skills sharp, as I said, I learned on a center fire gun that was, my first one was the Ruger hammer fired. My second one was a 1911, and my third one was a Beretta 92, all hammer fired with the hammer drop safeties. Some of them have return safeties on them where it's actually not a safety, such as this one has the safety on it. That makes this an excellent practice gun for that type of firearm. Grip is very similar. It has the wider portion and where your web it narrows. Of course, again, we see Talon grips on my polymer guns as I run the rubberized one. I'm not a sponsor of Talon, I'm just a fan of their grips. I think they do a great job. In fact, I should do a video on installation of these grips, on how to get them to stick good. The method I use, I've never had one come loose since they've changed their glue. And that was several years ago. This one has interchangeable back straps. This Walther P22 does. This is the larger back strap, even though I have smaller hands. This is a very compact, small gun. You can see it in my hands. It's quite small, but it handles just like the big boys. Some of the differences it has are significant, but subtle enough that it still works. Let's go over the features of it real quick and we'll see that. Of course, it is a polymer framed gun. You can see we're empty. It is a hammer fired gun, so it does have a decocker. The original one was not, had some differences in it, that the safety was not a decocker. If we put on fire with the red showing, we pull it down, hammer drops. Now there's a block in there that keeps the hammer from striking the firing pin. If I disengage the safety, rather, you see the hammer fall and see it crawl back that 32nd of an inch or whatever it is to prevent it from striking this firing pin. Do not fire these guns empty, without a snap cap or an empty round in the chamber. These will damage, unlike say a Ruger that has the notch cut out in the chamber for your firing pin. It will damage that over time. So they can be dry fired. Just put it on safe with that hammer block up. Walther doesn't necessarily recommend that, but it can be with the magazines. It does have a magazine disconnect. With the magazine installed, here we have an empty magazine. Go ahead and install it. Now you can see in with your safety engaged, you can still fire it in this. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to damage anything. It will not cock, as you can see, even with the magazine in. When it is on safe, the hammer will not stay back. But the double action does work if you wanted to practice that way. Take a chance on harming your block. Do not fire it in any case with even with the magazine in, out. Otherwise you might damage the gun. Does have the European style At the bottom of the trigger guard, safety, or rather magazine release. There we go. As you can see, I just reach down either with my middle finger or my trigger finger and do it. Thumb won't reach, even with this small of a gun, without reaching around. Can be done. It is ambidextrous. So that's one significant difference, probably the biggest one in it. That and the overall mechanical function of the gun, of course, is quite different. Takedown is relatively simple, similar to other guns of the blowback nature, particularly Walthers, if you're familiar with PPQs and whatnot, where they have the trigger guard that moves. This just has a latch here, quite stiff to get to move. But once you get that popped down, you're ready to disassemble. I'm going to cock the hammer to make it a little easier to swing it back. You push it back, fairly light spring, lift off the rear, and off it comes. Now the previous generations had a recoil spring that was not captured, and you had a tendency to lose that. This one is captured. You can see it's easily replaceable with that little threaded. And also now you can see we have a barrel that has it's captured by this front nut. You can pull this off and actually put an adapter on there, and you're ready to go suppressed on this firearm. So for the price point of this firearm, what a lot of advantages you have. To reassemble it, just put your end with the screw head on it into the little guide in your receiver there. When you do there's a view of the typical striker fired or modern polymer slide. No barrel in it, of course. The barrel stays attached to the gun, which lends to some accuracy. Guide the guide rod into its position there in the barrel, making sure your lock lever is still in the down position. Slide it back. At this point you have to put a little pressure downwards to force that hammer down, and once that's done, it'll just slide right into place, and that's it, done. So cleanup is extremely easy on it, and you get a wonderful firearm for a wonderful price. Sights, the rear sights, you can see typical 3-dot, very small dots, but very good for practice situations. Rear sight is adjustable for windage. Front sight is adjustable for elevation by changing the front sights, and the gun does come with several, I believe 3 additional front sights to adjust your point of aim. In fact, I have to raise my point of aim with this one. It comes actually a little bit low even for combat sight setups like the SIGs. You have to cover your target with the front sight. This one is similar, but so far, but it's actually shooting a couple inches lower than that. Much too low for my taste. Of course, that may have been my ammunition. I fired several hundred rounds of that old Winchester Wildcat through its older ammunition, so I got to try it with some different ammunition. It did just fine with the Wildcat, and I think I shot about 400 rounds through it in one session. Not one single misfire, jam with that dirty old ammunition. So it's very, very reliable, very, very economical, and a fantastic way to practice for the Sig Sauer hammer type firearms fans. Highly recommended at the price point. Like I said, found it on sale for just a twitch over $200. Can't be beat for a real high quality, nice brand name, Walther. You can see German made. As far as I know, Fort Smith, Arkansas. That's a were made by Smith & Wesson. Walther was for a while here in the United States being imported and sold by Smith & Wesson, but no longer. There we have it. Magazine disassembly's a little bit different on these. It has to have a coil spring, magazine spring right here. Just push the button, pull it out. There's a guide rod on the plate underneath this. Once you get that released and out of the way, you can slide your follower down. Much like a Ruger, you just pop this out when it's lined up with that little expanded spot in the slot, and out drops the follower. Assembly's the reverse. Put it in, drop your pin in, coil spring in. There's also a little guide rod on your follower. Make sure that engages. Engage the plate underneath guide rod with the spring. Hold it in place, push this in, and snap it down. You can see it has the read warning safety manual. One magazine came with that. The other magazine actually says P22 on it. So apparently there's two different base plates available, one with the warning, one without. And then one other thing, this is a kind of a quasi double stack magazine. The rims of your cartridges will actually alternate back and forth and stick out of this groove just a little bit for about the top 4 or 5 rounds, 10 round magazine. And I thought that was crazy the first time I saw that. There's something wrong, but no, it's just the way they fit so many rounds in a short magazine by allowing that little double stack feature on these little magazines. But it will surprise you the first time you see those 22 rounds lining up all mismatched looking in the magazine. Functions perfectly though. I even had them line up where I had 2 rounds stacked the same direction, just in quick loading. Went ahead and fired it, no problems at all. Still functioned just fine. So very good quality magazine. Works, does its job for this fine little firearm. So highly recommended, and we'll drop it at that and say go ahead and get you one on sale if you can. Can't go wrong. Thanks for watching.